On an ordinary day in the park, a young man's quiet resolve turns into an extraordinary display of courage, leaving everyone watching in awe and setting the stage for a life-altering confrontation. The air crackled with tension as Michael, calm yet unyielding, faced down three towering bikers with nothing but his unwavering stance. Their mocking laughter faded as his words cut through like steel. "You don't want to do this." What followed was a breathtaking clash of discipline and brute force, drawing a stunned crowd and a foreboding promise from the defeated leader. "This ain't over, kid." But for Michael, this moment was only the beginning of a deeper fight, for honor, protection, and inner strength. Before we journey further into this unforgettable story, make sure you're subscribed to Epic Story Moments. Hit that bell icon now so you never miss an incredible tale. Join our community by liking, sharing, and commenting to keep these heartwarming stories coming. And hey, tell us where you're watching from. We love connecting with you all. Michael stood tall, his posture calm but deliberate, his sharp suit contrasting the rugged leather jackets of the bikers. Despite the adrenaline rushing through him, his voice remained steady. "You won't touch him," he said, his tone firm and resolute, his eyes locked on the burly man in front of him. The bikers exchanged glances, their smirks faltering for a moment. They hadn't expected this level of composure from a teenager, but the burly man chuckled, attempting to reassert his dominance. "Big words, kid," he said, stepping even closer. "But words don't mean much out here." Michael's karate training kicked in, not physically, but mentally. He was taught that control over emotions was just as important as physical prowess. He remained motionless, his mind calculating every detail. The bikers positioned their posture and their intentions. He could see their overconfidence, their assumption that they held all the power. Before anyone could make a move, Jordan, the fearless 10-year-old, shouted, "Leave my brother alone." He grabbed a soccer ball and hurled it toward the bikers. It wasn't a strong throw, but it was enough to draw their attention. One of the bikers laughed. "Feisty little guy, isn't he?" He started to take a step toward Jordan, but Michael shifted, positioning himself between his brother and the bikers in one smooth motion. "I said, leave him alone," Michael repeated, his voice sharp at this time. The burly man narrowed his eyes. "And if we don't," he sneered, daring Michael to respond. Michael took a slow breath, channeling every lesson his karate master had drilled into him. "Then you'll regret it," he said, his tone low, but carrying a weight that even the bikers could sense. The park seemed to grow quieter as the tension mounted. Parents and kids had begun to notice the confrontation. A few turned their heads, murmuring among themselves, but no one intervened yet. The bikers didn't seem to care. Their focus remained on Michael and Jordan. "Let's see what you've got, tough guy," the burly man said, reaching out as if to grab Michael by the collar. But Michael moved faster than anyone expected. With a swift, fluid motion, he stepped aside, redirecting the man's arm and causing him to stumble forward. It wasn't an aggressive strike. It was a demonstration of control and precision. The other bikers were stunned for a moment, but their surprise quickly turned into anger. "You're gonna regret that, kid," one of them growled, lunging toward Michael. But Michael was ready. Years of training had conditioned him to stay calm under pressure. He sidestepped the attacker, using his own momentum against him, sending the man sprawling onto the grass. Jordan watched in awe, his eyes wide. "Michael," he called out, concern creeping into his voice. But Michael didn't look back. "Stay where you are, Jordan," he instructed firmly. The remaining bikers hesitated. They hadn't expected resistance, let alone someone who could handle himself this well. One of them muttered, "He's just a kid." But the burly man, now red-faced with anger, barked, "He's not walking away from this." Michael stood his ground, his stance steady, his eyes sharp. He didn't want to fight, but he would if it meant protecting his brother. "You can walk away," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "This doesn't have to go any further." The burly man hesitated, his bravado faltering. The crowd around the park had grown larger, parents pulling out their phones, recording the scene. The bikers weren't just facing Michael now. They were facing an audience. One of the bikers tapped the burly man on the shoulder. "Let's go," he muttered. "This isn't worth it." But the burly man wasn't ready to back down. He took a step closer to Michael, raising his fist. Michael braced himself, ready to defend, when a loud voice cut through the tension. "Hey, what's going on here?" A police officer strode into the park, his hand resting on his holstered taser. The bikers froze, their bravado evaporating in an instant. The officer's presence shifted the power dynamic entirely. The burly man lowered his fist, his jaw clenching. "Nothing, officer," he muttered. "We were just leaving." "Good idea," the officer said, his tone firm. He looked at the bikers, then at Michael and Jordan. "I suggest you don't come back." The bikers exchanged glances before reluctantly heading toward their motorcycles. The burly man paused, glaring at Michael one last time, but Michael didn't flinch. He stood tall, meeting the man's gaze until he finally turned and walked away. As the motorcycles roared to life and disappeared into the distance, Michael let out a slow breath. Jordan ran to him, throwing his arms around his older brother. "That was amazing," he said, his voice filled with admiration. Michael smiled, ruffling Jordan's hair. "It's over now," he said, his voice gentle. But inside, he knew the experience would stay with him for a long time. The officer approached, his expression softening. "You handled yourself well," he said. "But next time, call for help sooner." Michael nodded. "Thank you, officer." As they walked home, Michael felt a surge of pride, not because he had stood up to the bikers, but because he had done so without losing his composure or compromising his principles. His mom's words echoed in his mind. Never let them see you sweat, and tonight, he had lived up to them. Jordan looked up at him, his eyes shining. "You're my hero, Michael," he said. Michael smiled, wrapping an arm around his little brother. "Let's get home," he said. "Mom's going to want to hear about this." And as they walked under the fading light of the evening, Michael couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude for his training, for his brother, and for the lessons that had shaped him into who he was. Michael's heart was pounding, but his face showed no sign of it. The leader revved his engine, as if trying to intimidate him one last time. Michael stood his ground, his sharp eyes fixed on the retreating bikers. The tension in the air lingered, but the immediate danger seemed to have passed. The crowd that had gathered was silent at first, their gazes shifting between the young man in the sharp suit and the gang of bikers retreating into the distance. Then, one by one, murmurs of admiration began to ripple through the onlookers. Parents clutched their children a little tighter. Teens exchanged awed whispers, and Jordan ran to his brother's side, his small face full of concern and admiration. "Michael, are you okay?" Jordan's voice trembled slightly as he tugged at his brother's sleeve. Michael crouched down to meet his brother's eyes, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. "I'm fine, Jordan. They're gone now," he said, his tone gentle and reassuring. But inside, he couldn't ignore the weight of what had just happened. A man from the crowd stepped forward, his expression a mixture of gratitude and amazement. "Kid, that was incredible. I've never seen anything like that. You just stood up to them like it was nothing." Michael nodded politely, brushing off the praise. "Thank you, sir. I just did what I had to do." Another voice chimed in from the crowd. "You kept your cool the whole time. Most people would have run, but not you. What's your name, son?" "Michael," he replied simply, standing tall but modest. By now, Jordan was holding his brother's hand tightly, his earlier fear replaced with a sense of pride. "That was so cool, Michael. You were like one of those superheroes from the movies." Michael smiled down at his little brother, but his expression turned serious as he spoke softly. "Jordan, being strong doesn't mean looking for fights. It means knowing when to stand your ground and when to walk away." As the crowd began to disperse, a woman approached them, holding her phone. "Michael," she said, her voice warm yet hesitant, I captured everything on video. I think people need to see this. To know there are young men like you out there, standing up for what's right." Michael hesitated. He wasn't seeking attention or recognition. His mother had always taught him that true character wasn't about who was watching, but about doing the right thing because it was right. "I'd appreciate it if you didn't post it online," he said finally. "I just want to keep things quiet." The woman nodded, respecting his wishes. "You're a remarkable young man," she said before walking away. As the brothers began their walk home, Michael's mind wandered. He thought about his karate training, all the times his mother had reminded him to use his skills responsibly, and the moments of doubt he'd felt under the oak tree when the bikers first approached. He wasn't just proud of how he handled the situation. He was grateful for the lessons that had shaped him into the person he was today. When they reached their house, their mother was waiting at the door, her expression a mixture of relief and curiosity. "What took you boys so long?" she asked, scanning them for any signs of trouble. Michael exchanged a glance with Jordan, who grinned up at him. "We had an interesting walk home," Michael said with a slight chuckle, ruffling Jordan's hair. Their mother raised an eyebrow, but decided not to press further. "Well, dinner's almost ready. Wash up, both of you." Later that night, as Michael sat by the window in his room, the events of the evening played over in his mind. He thought about the bikers, their aggression, and how easily things could have gone differently. But more than that, he thought about Jordan, how his little brother had stood up despite the danger, showing a courage that belied his age. Michael knew he couldn't protect Jordan from everything, but he could teach him to be strong, kind, and wise. "That's what matters," he murmured to himself, gazing out at the quiet street. As the moonlight spilled across his desk, illuminating the book he'd set aside earlier, Michael picked it up and turned to the page he'd bookmarked. His mother's words echoed in his mind once more. Asterisk, never let them see you sweat. Asterisk, he smiled faintly, closing the book and setting it down again. Because tonight wasn't just about standing his ground. It was about remembering who he was and what he stood for. And that, he realized, was a lesson no biker or anyone else could ever take away from him. Michael stood still, his eyes fixed on the group of bikers, his posture calm but deliberate. He shifted his weight slightly, planting his feet into a practiced stance, one honed by countless hours in the dojo. The burly leader of the bikers smirked, his laughter breaking the tense silence. "Look at this guy. Thinks he's some kind of hero," he jeered, the others quickly joining in, their laughter echoing across the park. Michael's expression remained steady, unyielding. His silence unnerved them more than they realized. "You're not going to do anything," one of the bikers said, stepping closer with a smug grin. Finally, Michael spoke, his voice low, deliberate, and carrying a weight that silenced the laughter. "You don't want to do this," he said, his calm demeanor masking the steel beneath his words. For a moment, the bikers exchanged confused glances, unsure of how to respond to his confidence. But the leader, unwilling to back down, stepped forward, raising a hand to shove Michael. What happened next unfolded so quickly that even the bikers couldn't process it. As the leader's hand shot forward, Michael sidestepped with the precision of a coiled spring releasing. The biker stumbled slightly, caught off guard. In a single fluid motion, Michael grabbed the man's wrist and twisted it expertly, forcing him to drop his arm with a pained grunt. The biker glared at Michael, anger burning in his eyes. "What the?" he started to say, but Michael cut him off. "I warned you," he said, his voice calm yet commanding. The two other bikers rushed forward, clearly deciding that they wouldn't let their leader be humiliated. The first swung wildly, his punch lacking any technique or precision. Michael ducked with ease, his movements smooth and deliberate. With a sharp kick to the man's knee, Michael sent him collapsing to the ground with a cry of pain. The second hesitated, his bravado faltering. That split second was all Michael needed. Pivoting on his heel, he delivered a spinning kick to the man's ribs, sending him staggering backward, clutching his side. The leader, red-faced with fury, charged at Michael like a raging bull, his fists swinging wildly. But Michael didn't meet force with force. Instead, he stayed light on his feet, dodging each punch with a grace that only years of training could produce. By now, a crowd had gathered at the edge of the park. Parents, kids, and even soccer players paused to watch the scene unfold. Someone pulled out a phone, capturing every second of the confrontation. The leader made another desperate attempt, lunging forward to grab Michael by the lapel of his jacket. But Michael twisted out of his grip and delivered a precise strike to his solar plexus. The biker stumbled backward, gasping for air, his tough exterior cracking under Michael's calm control. "Enough," Michael said, his voice firm and loud enough to carry across the park. His stance remained strong, but his expression held no malice, only a resolute determination. "I don't want to hurt you. Walk away." For a moment, it seemed the bikers might listen. The leader wheezed, holding his chest, while the other two groaned on the ground, their earlier bravado shattered. Finally, the leader growled, "Let's go," motioning to his friends. They limped back to their bikes, muttering curses under their breath. But as they started their engines, the leader turned back, pointing a finger at Michael. "This ain't over, kid," he spat before roaring off with his crew. The applause from the crowd broke the tension. Murmurs of admiration rippled through the group as people began to disperse. Jordan, Michael's younger brother, ran up to him, his face a mix of fear and awe. "Michael, are you okay?" he asked, his voice trembling. Michael knelt down, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "I'm fine," he said with a small smile. "Let's go home." As they walked away, the weight of the encounter hung in the air. Jordan kept stealing glances at his brother, his admiration battling with lingering worry. Finally, he blurted out, "How did you do all that? I mean, they were huge, and there were 3 of them." Michael chuckled softly, shaking his head. "It's not about being bigger, Jordan," he explained. "It's about being prepared, staying calm, and knowing when to act." "But what if they come back?" Jordan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "That guy said it wasn't over." Michael stopped walking, turning to face his brother. "If they do, we'll handle it. But listen to me, Jordan," he said, his tone serious. "What happened today wasn't about fighting. It was about standing up for myself. And for you, violence isn't the answer unless it's the only option." Jordan nodded slowly, his brother's words sinking in. Michael placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Remember, it's not about proving how strong you are. It's about knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone take that away from you." When they got home, their mother was waiting on the porch, her arms crossed and a concerned look on her face. "You're late," she said, her voice tinged with worry. Michael hesitated, glancing at Jordan, who stayed quiet. "Something happened at the park," Michael admitted. He recounted the story carefully, not wanting to worry her more than necessary. As he spoke, her expression shifted from fear to pride. "Michael," she said when he finished, her voice thick with emotion, "I'm proud of you for protecting your brother and yourself. But promise me one thing. Don't take risks like that unless you have no other choice." "I promise," Michael replied, his sincerity clear. That night, as Michael lay in bed, he replayed the events in his mind. The biker's aggression, the crowd's reaction, and the leader's parting words. "This ain't over, kid." But instead of fear, Michael felt a quiet resolve. He'd learned long ago that fear only had power if you let it. Moments like this proved that courage and discipline could make a difference. Michael's story is a powerful reminder that true strength lies in knowing your worth and standing up for what's right. His calm confidence and unwavering resolve in the face of adversity show that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the determination to act despite it. If this story moved you, take a moment to reflect on your own inner strength. Remember, standing up for yourself or others is never easy, but it's always worth it. Don't forget to like this video, share with someone who could use a reminder of their own resilience, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories. because sometimes the quietest voices leave the strongest impact. Michael's story teaches us that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about standing tall when it matters most. In a world that often tests our resolve, it's our inner strength and unwavering values that define us. As Michael drifted to sleep that night, he knew one thing for certain. Standing up for what's right, no matter how daunting, is always worth it. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who could use a dose of courage, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful and uplifting stories. Click the bell icon to stay updated, because your support fuels these inspiring moments.